Hello.
Hi.
It's good to hear and see all of you, and as I mean see, I mean the comments, because I can't actually see you.
It's good to be back, guys.
It is great to be back. So today, what are we going to talk about?
We're gonna talk about intimacy.
Intimacy.
And well, intimacy / PDA.
PDA, more specifically.
PDA.
So, what about this football player?
This football player, he had just won, I think, the semifinal championship. And his wife, she runs to him and she hops up in his arms and he like grabs her by the butt, and their children are like right in front of them. I thought it was a very endearing thing. You know, I don't know if this was his first time going to the Super Bowl or whatever. It seemed like they had gone through a lot to get to this point, and they were just, you know, kind of embracing one another in that moment. And he was just being a husband and grabbing his woman's butt.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, if you read through the comments, a lot of people were like, oh, that's so inappropriate. Why would you do that in front of the whole world and in front of these children? And the children didn't seem the least bit concerned, because they probably have seen this a lot in their households already. So the children, they didn't really seem too bothered by it. I mean, honestly, the people that were commenting seemed more bothered than the children. But I just thought that this was a good topic, simply because what are the rules or the rules of engagement for PDA, and what does that look like? And
I find it interesting, to be honest, because I think that it is important to show this, you know, because it shows a healthy African American family where this man is affectionately loving his wife, you know, he is loving his kids, and he just had a major accomplishment. You know, what better way than to show a family doing what a family should do? You know, I think that it's very important to also share that with your kids. I mean, honestly, that's the only way that you can break stigmas. You know, and obviously to this family, to these kids, everything's normal. You know, I also find it a little hypocritical, to be honest with you. You know, where you'll see other types of relationships where it may not necessarily be, you know, with a husband and wife, but they get to, you know, show PDA and it's fine. You know, you don't typically see or hear a lot of backlash about that. And that's cool, you know, because I think that if you have, you know, love, you should be able to express that love. So why is it now that this family has the opportunity to share and express that love in a family unit that has, you know, these two individuals? Why is that a problem?
I mean, me personally, I don't really mind PDA. I feel like, okay, don't get it twisted. Like, I don't think you should be borderline having sex in public.
Yeah,
I think that there is a line, you know, for all of us, not just children, because I don't want to see that either. But I think that if you love each other, especially in a moment like that, that was such a grand moment.
Yeah.
And it was just, we don't know what they've been.
Unscripted.
Yeah, it was very unscripted.
Genuine.
It seemed genuine. It seemed like a wife who's proud and love her husband, and a husband who's it seemed like he's used to doing that anyway. So it felt very, you know,
it wasn't forced. She looked
organic.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, it didn't feel like, oh, no, it looks very organic. Like, we do this all the time. I'm proud of my husband. He was, you know, happy and in the moment with his wife. And, you know, they weren't groping all over each other or anything. He literally just grabbed her by, and she ran in his arms, and he grabbed her by her butt.
He gave a little squeeze.
Yeah, and that's fine. His wife.
That's
and
his wife.
It is not inappropriate to smack or squeeze your spouse's bottom in public. I genuinely don't. Now, I mean, there's a time and a place. Now, if I'm in the courtroom, I'm probably not gonna smack James' butt. You know, like, I don't think that's the place for that.
Maybe not in court.
I don't think that's the place.
You're at the presidential inauguration.
I don't think that's the place.
And to be very honest with you, I will honestly say I don't know. I mean, I think even then that wouldn't be too much of a problem, like a cute little squeeze, when Barack and Michelle Obama were dancing when they first did.
Yeah, I don't think he was squeezing her butt.
It's not necessarily like always like gripping and holding for an extended period of time. But I'm saying even if it were a cute little, I think that would be cute. That's
if
nice.
They did that because we're talking about
you can tastefully do it.
United States,
So
I think that's a little different because you're talking about the president of the United States in a form. But if they had a private something or whatever, and he did the top part, me personally, I feel like in that setting, maybe just the top part. You put your hand a little bit lower, that it rests like right on the top of the bottom. I feel like that's a good place that you could probably do it. I don't know if I would do a full squeeze, but I definitely not in that arena.
I personally would not have had a problem if it were a quick, cute little squeeze. It doesn't have to be a huge, knuckle crushing squeeze. It doesn't have to be that. It could have just been, a cute little, all right, look, yeah. Because, I mean, it was really nice for example, like I said, when the president and, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, who I love, by the way, I absolutely love these two people. They're very class act. They, no marriage is perfect, but yet they're still a good example, of what two people, I think at least, may look like or could look like, in that type of position with the amounts of pressure that comes with all of that. Mm-hmm. Be that as it may, when they first went up there after he was elected president, for them to dance and hold each other in their arms, and did he kiss her? I don't remember exactly.
They might have kissed, and
it was
fine.
Perfect.
That's fine.
But you could imagine that there were people who were also upset that he even did that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was because that is like he's the president of the United States. He's supposed to.
But he's human, and I think personally that for someone even in that position to show, that type of affection is in fact a good example of American values, to be honest.
Because you love your family, you love your wife, your family oriented.
Yeah, that affection, your children are looking at that and they're like, this is what I want, maybe, and it's happening. So to bring it back to this particular football player, for him to do that, it's fine, even when I look at someone like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the way that they love each other.
They have
and look at each other.
You can just tell. It's feeling like certain couples that are in the limelight.
They hold hands.
Yeah, you can tell that it's kind of spilling off of them. And I think, just talking about that, because we're talking about more specifically couples in the limelight. But when you transition it to just the average person, I mean, for us, we hold hands in public.
Yeah. But see, some people will say that holding hands is not a bad thing, and it's fine. But some other people are extreme and say holding hands
is like too much.
It's too much, like for example, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry held hands, but what was his brother?
Oh right, Prince William and Kate.
Prince William
and
Kate.
Kate, I guess.
Don't quote me out, but I don't. If I remember, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were a little bit unhappy with the way that they
I'm not sure if it was specifically them, but I think maybe the media were kind of spinning that. It's like, oh, look at how they act in public and look at how they act type of thing. It was a pinning against each other type of thing, about how they choose to love on their spouse.
Yeah, whereas one couple didn't touch each other at all. They weren't even, at all, you wouldn't even know necessarily that there was love there. Personally, from my opinion, based off of what you see, compared to
loving and touching and all that.
And all they were doing was holding hands.
To be fair, on the same vein as that, sometimes loving and affection doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy either. But at the same time, I do think that meaning like, okay, so we look at some of these couples that are all hugged up and everything,
goals,
and then the month they're divorcing.
Yeah,
You know,
there are
so
a couple
it's like,
of, you guys know, there are a couple of examples there.
yeah,
you
like they're
know,
lovey-dovey and
holding
then
hands.
next month they're divorced. So I do think that there is a catch-22 with that.
There's
Like,
a difference
it could
between putting
be-
on an act.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a difference between, oh, we're all hugged up and loved up
Yeah.
versus, you know, I just want to grab your hand because I just in a moment and I feel it. I feel like those things are, and it's not up to, and for me personally, I don't think that's up to you or I or anyone
Yeah.
to determine what that is, which is why I think the whole idea is kind of outlandish that people are telling them, oh, that's too much PDA. Why are you doing that in front of your kids?
Yeah.
Why would you do that on national TV? And it's like, how are you? I don't really think it's up to you to judge about what they
Yeah.
feel
And
should be
And
their
again,
way to express love.
media is so weird when you hear people say things like that because it's like they'll show all kinds of other stuff, you know, naked people or close to near naked people on TV, you know, where some people will agree, others don't, but they'll present it as, look at this fashion design, you know, or
Where they're half naked.
where they're half naked or more than naked or essentially naked.
I
I don't know if you can be more than naked, but I
you
mean,
must be really naked.
but I mean, they show these things, and it's presented as amazing and
Art.
fashion, and it's art, you know, and it's something that should be quote unquote the standard. Yet at the same time, you're looking at a actual married couple with
Who
children
love each other.
who love each other, and suddenly that's too much.
And I think it's very important for like for our household, we wanted to create a standard where it was very important for us to show love to each other so
Yeah.
that our children can see love. Because how do children navigate what love looks like? You
Yeah.
know, when you're growing up in a household where your mom and dad, they hold each other, they hold hands, you walk past and dad gives mom a swat on the bottom.
I'm gonna do
It's
that
like
all the time.
he does it now. No matter where we're at, by the way. And it's like,
It's my wife. You know,
yeah.
you go your whole life with people saying, "Wait till you're married." At least for us,
Yeah.
because in context to what we grew up with
Yeah.
in a Christian household
When you're married
and at
you should do
church,
that.
the entire time you're growing up, everybody's always saying, "Wait till you're married. When you're married, you do this. When you're married, you can do that. But until then, you don't do it." And it always seemed to be the thing that they would throw in your face as you're growing up. But now when you're married, it's this, you know, depending on where you go, some places are a little bit more conservative than others. Others are a little bit more open to it. But I found that sometimes, like in church or places like that, you know,
It's a little bit more conservative.
you feel the pressure of not being so close, which is why what I'll try to do is intentionally hold you by your waist or, you know, hold your hand and stuff like that, because it is to show and to present this idea that marriage, in my opinion, in our opinion, is supposed to be a healthy and normal thing.
And it's not forced. It's like you're not forcing to do it. This is like a natural trajectory type of thing. Like this, if I normally hold your hand,
Yeah, why
would I not normally hold your hand in public? You know, if I normally grab your waist, why would I not normally do that? I mean, unless, like we said, unless you're like having sex, I think you should probably keep that PDA to yourself. But but other than that,
no one else wants to see that.
or getting very close to it, I don't really think we don't need to be that far in it. But something as simple as you picking me up and grabbing my butt and giving it a squeeze, I don't see the problem with that. And we're talking about the confines of where it was at. It was on a football field after a major game. It wasn't at a courthouse or a church or even in the middle of the mall. You know, like, you know, that even in the middle of the mall, that might seem a little off. You know what I mean? But
it was a highlighted moment.
It was a very emotionally driven moment that was preserved just for that. And I feel like it kind of tainted the moment to some extent, because these people are genuinely loving each other and they're genuinely happy. And then you have people commenting, oh, you're doing wrong, that's wrong. And it's like, it's in what world? And I'm curious to know if this is maybe a generational thing. Because, you know, older generationals, from what I can tell sometimes, they tend to be a little bit more conservative with PDA. Of course, that's not everybody. But I'm just saying, as a whole, generational wise, they tend to be, from my experience, a little bit more conservative than the younger generation.
I feel like it's very it's almost an oxymoron. Here's what I mean by that is, people aren't, it's weird, but people are not uncomfortable with PDA unless they know that it's somebody that they are actually significant to the other person.
What do you mean by that?
So if they find, for example, kissing cam, when you're on a football field or during a game or a basketball court or something like that, and it could be two random people and they kiss together or something like that, and everybody's cheering, and it's really, really nice and it's really cool because it's just something fun to do. But the moment that you find out that it's actually someone who is special to you and you're doing it, and it's not like
a football player
or whatever, now it's a problem. You know, or, you know, like remember that commercial? I can't even remember what that commercial. It was like two people were kissing. It was like really just weird.
That Sprite commercial that they actually banned. I think it was Sprite. I'm not sure. It was like a Super Bowl commercial. Right? And it was weird. It was really weird. I can't remember the confines of what it was, but it was a very, very weird commercial.
Yeah, it was just, and then they tried to enhance the sound of the kissing. Yeah, and they were doing it really uncomfortably long.
Or even, you remember the old, they stopped them, but the old Herbal Essence commercials where they would be emulating, like, there would be a woman in the shower and she would be washing her hair, but then it would be emulating sex sounds. She would be emulating sex sounds, like, like, and it's like, you can put that on commercials that people see every day, and children, they're not, you know, they're paying attention, by the way, so they know what, because as a child I knew that, you know, I don't think I haven't seen those in some years.
It started out, but for us, Ren and Stimpy.
Yes, and that's what but that's what I'm saying. It's like, you can show that type of stuff, which is very crude and very, like, I just don't think those type of things are good. Pure family fun type of thing. Yeah. But you can't show a husband and a wife showing love to each other.
Yeah, there's no real way around it. You know, you can make an excuse for the reason why and this, that, and the other, or whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there is no legitimate reason to say this type of PDA is okay, but this one isn't. You know, it's actually very, very backwards.
I agree with that. I think that as a society, I just think we just need to break the barriers down. And I think this just goes back to a conversation I think we were having not too long ago, that's talking about how we view like sexuality in this community. It's like, it's either, there's no happy medium. It's either overly sex or undersexed. Yeah. And there needs to be some sort of balance in between to show you, you know, this is appropriate. This is okay. This may not be appropriate for your home, but this is appropriate for someone else's home. Yeah. And my thing is, long as clothes aren't coming off or hands or things going other places, then it's like, it's all appropriate. It just depends on what your preference is. Yeah. Appropriation versus preference. That's what I think should be the baseline. Appropriation versus, you know, what your preference is. Because the bottom line is, do we show PDA more than other couples? Probably. But do we show less than other couples? Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just depends on what your preference is. And I just don't think as a society it's our job to really judge that. I think that you just need to understand what's appropriate for you and in your marriage, and let other people have theirs. Like, let other people live their life the way they see fit. Their children didn't seem to be affected negatively at all by that, it seems like they might come from a very loving household where they see a lot of love, and then they grow up to be adults to be the same loving type of adults and know how to express their emotions and love. And so I just think that people should just allow people to do that.
Yeah, it's very important to make, I think, affection in a marriage or relationship, especially in front of children, normal, because in doing that, those children, like you said, are able to, emulate that and take it, and determine what they, see as healthy versus what is, unhealthy, and is there a fine line between PDA as a loving family, a loving couple, and abuse PDA?
Abuse. Oh, well, because I think that
because sometimes people can
from
force
what so I have been around some people that I have speculated might have been abused or whatever, just over my lifetime, and it felt at times that type of PDA, I don't know, it was just something about it that just
seems like one person may feel like not as under duress a little bit, and duress doesn't always mean being extremely obvious, as it relates to.
But it just felt kind of awkward, even for us looking at it.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable and awkward.
But the other person may be trying to sell the point that you're in love. It doesn't seem natural. It doesn't seem to be, in a equilibrium, so to speak, as far as the love is concerned. It definitely seems one-sided, and so what does that look like, is definitely a question that people can ask, but also understanding that there are different cultures too.
Culture does play a role in that, because in some cultures PDA is, and that's what I'm saying, if you are culturally sensitive and someone from another culture comes over here and because you have some cultures who are overly, who we think, in this society, some people, they are like overly,
like a dad
PDA
kissing his kids on the mouth and stuff like that.
And
that's
we're
considered
like,
normal to some people because that's what they culturally do.
That's what they culturally do.
But to some other culture, that's like, why are you?
Like you have other cultures where they don't even touch. You have other cultures like we don't touch at all in public. So so
that means that love looks different for a lot of different people. Then
it does.
It's like, who is to say that one way of love is necessarily then the standard?
It's not, and that's what my original point was, is that we just need to get to a place where everyone just accepts whatever the baseline is for each person.
I can see why that's hard, though. I can honestly understand why that's difficult, because to say that people should just accept that, it's kind of like if you're raised a certain way, where how you're raised is, you're in a love. Let's assume that you're in a loving family where your mom and dad, or your parents are, or your guardians are, showing you love, and you feel emotionally full, and you feel emotionally taken care of, and then you have a friend who that friend is, let's say they're depressed for whatever reason. It could be for any number of reasons they're depressed. It may not even be that they're obviously at least having issues with their own family, so to speak. Let's say they're not having issues with their family, but to you, from your point of view, you see that person and you see how their parents or how their family interact with them, where to you it's perceived as cold, or it's perceived as, and they're just like, well, my family just loves me this way, but to you it could be seen like, no, that's not love. Because so I can understand how that becomes murky, especially if both of you get into a relationship.
That does, that adds an added layer there.
Because now it's like, the question becomes, who gets to say to who that the way that they were loved was wrong?
And that's an interesting point that you just made there. Because when we had our premarital counseling before we got married, that was one of the things we talked about, cultural differences. Fortunately for us, we didn't have like any differences culturally.
And because I do want you to keep saying, but I'm saying what you were saying, but culturally also does not, for anyone else who's looking, at us, does not mean just skin color. Like we're African American, people of color. Just because there are thousands, not millions of other people who are people of color, that does not mean that we have the same culture. Because within the culture, there are other cultures, there are subset cultures.
Because that could even mean different countries.
Like a Haitian individual to a Jamaican individual to a Guyanese person.
That could just be African. That could be
African.
That's the differences of culture, and that's what I'm saying. Fortunately for us, because we come from kind of the same
church background, different church background,
or even just different regions. Regionally, that could be different. And it's fortunately for us, like I said, we kind of come from the same background, so it wasn't an issue for us. But I do think that having those premarital counseling or having those conversations about your cultural differences, that could play a role, because honestly, that could play a role into how you do marriage, because you may have one person that doesn't, like in their culture, we don't touch. And then you have the old opposite where we just love all over each other. So it's like, and then you put those two people into a marriage. Yeah. Where's the medium? Where's the baseline?
Tough. Especially if you're trying to adjust, because one person may feel like you don't love them, and the other person does. So then it's hard to distinguish the difference between the family that's considered normal versus someone who's not considered normal.
Because in your eyes, it's not normal. And even if you just look at other couples just as a whole, and you just take the culture out of it, and you just place, you put it into a couple, one person, maybe an introvert person, and they don't really like the touch or whatever, and you have another person who's an extroverted person who likes to love all over you, cuddle and everything
Or it could be the opposite, because just because you're introverted doesn't mean that you don't like to touch. You can be introverted and love to touch.
Yes.
And be extroverted and not really like to touch.
Either way it goes, like swapping or whatever the case may be, the fact that you may like low touch or you may like high touch, and you get into a relationship and your spouse likes the opposite, it's like those are things to think about too. Those are definitely things to think about and all that stuff. And also, do you think the same way about PDA? Because it's one thing for you to do what you do privately, like hug and love with each other privately, but what are your thoughts about even PDA? Because you can have some people who are more conservative in public. They don't really like to hold hands and all that stuff, but then their spouse is the opposite. They want to hold hands. They want to, run up and jump up in your arms. Yeah. They want to do those things. So it's like, I guess it really just boils down to, what does that look like in your marriage? What type of person are you? Or relationship, marriage, relationship, whatever. What does that look like? What does your cultural differences look like? How does that, that's a lot to unpack. And that's base by base, person by person.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I absolutely applaud that NFL husband for even being able to pick up your wife and to love her like that in public. That's one way of just being like, this is my girl right here. And at the same time, you're excited, you're happy. I take my hat off to you, man, because honestly, that's something that, we need to see more of. Especially with Black people, men of color, healthy men of color, who want to show that love to their wives and their children.
Because I think the culture is that men are supposed to be stoic and cold and, like, I'm the man of the family and, I'm up here and everyone else is down here. Yeah. I feel like it balances and it makes you're human. You know, you love your wife and you want to show that you love your wife. And it's one thing for you to say it, but to physically show it to the world is a whole other thing.
And not care what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean just because you don't prefer to show it that way, it doesn't mean that you don't love your wife.
Yeah.
But I just don't
You're
think
not
that
any
people,
less than that. You just don't. I guess
don't show it that way.
Yeah, just don't allow the pressure of other people. Don't allow that to dictate how you
want to show love.
Want to show your love to your significant other.
And that's why I think the bottom line is maybe not acceptance is the word. I think that respect. Maybe that's the word. What? Okay, so remember earlier I said that everyone needed to accept everyone's baseline about what their version of PDA is. Mm-hmm. I think acceptance is probably not the word. It should be respect.
Yeah. Respect is better.
Be the word.
Definitely better.
Just respect everyone's preference.
Yeah. Because the reality is you cannot accept everything. You know, how your life or lifestyle or how you choose to live may not be something that any of us may accept. That's fine, because that's how I live my life. However, I can respect you enough to say this is how you decide to do things in your life. And so long as it doesn't affect me for harm, you know, or anything of the other, you do you. You do what makes you happy, because that's what the American dream is all about. You know, it's doing what makes you happy to make you live in a healthy life. As long as it's healthy also.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
healthy. It has to be
lifestyle, healthy. You know, what's healthy, you know, because ultimately, you know, cultures, that's what makes America great from the perspective of, and, you know, certainly it has its flaws, you know, as an African-American man, woman, we know that. But what also makes America great is the fact that it has all of these different cultures. And, you know, within these different cultures, people can learn about each other and, you know, choose to love each other and create, you know, new cultures together, you know, blended cultures together, you know. And that only works if, one, you learn about each other, two, accept the fact that not everyone will accept you for what you do, but recognize that so long as you respect each other, that you both can learn and grow together. You know, so that's what we wanted to share, what our thoughts were regarding, you know, PDA. I'm curious to see what you think. It's certainly okay to disagree with us. Just keep it respectful in the comments. And absolutely, we love you. You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.